Hello, this is Holly Phillips. I teach at Salem Middle School, ELA 6th grade, and of course it's in DeKalb County. And I have been teaching for 18 years, and I am going into my 19th year teaching, and I am so excited about this new school year. First off, I would like to thank all of my classmates, all of my peers, for having such wonderful, courageous conversations about all the various topics that we discussed in class, from being culturally responsive to understanding, white privilege and the inequities that surround our educational system. I believe that I learned a lot from your thoughts and your experiences, so I just want to say thank you. I want to say a special thank you to Dr. Grantham and Jessa Lucky. You all really put a lot of thought into the creation of this program, and it was amazing for me. From the course materials to the discussions and the assessments. I mean, I really feel like I was provided with powerful tools in which to consider multicultural gifted education as well as just multicultural education in general. I mean, I'm walking away with this from just with a wealth of knowledge that's amazing. I appreciate the seamless nature of the and conciseness of each activity, from the posts, the papers, and the live discussions to the timely feedback. And that was really awesome for me. So, with no further ado, I'm going to talk about the course objectives. And I have to say that all of the course objectives are powerful tools to understanding and addressing multicultural education. I feel like I met two goals, but really, I feel like I can just talk about all of them, but I don't have a chance to right now. So the first one is understanding theories and terminology associated with multicultural education. The second one is recognize prejudice and oppressive institutions that marginalize students from diverse backgrounds. So the terminology for me has been extraordinarily powerful, and I'm just going to kind of reflect a little bit on why. When I reflect back on all of my experiences teaching, and even my experiences as a student, um, I have dealt with racial discrimination. I have observed, you know, gifted programs with all white students that have absolutely no cultural diversity. Um, and I've always known that these vast inequities exist. And I believe that I have had a keen awareness of the perpetual racial discrimination that exists within the American educational system. It is something that has been on my mind since I was in high school, and I noticed the differences between the college prep classes and the gifted classes. And when you're the only black person in the gifted classes, it's a little strange. Um, However, until now, it was quite difficult for me to articulate and clearly voice my ideas without having the appropriate terminology. But now I have the terminology and I can speak with some authority concerning issues of multicultural gifted education and the inequities that persist. I understand, what it means to be self-aware. I can question a teacher about their self-awareness. But I also know that with self-awareness comes, personal work. I had to do personal work for myself at my own school because when I came to Salem after teaching in Gwinnett for 13 years at majority white schools, I realized that I wasn't culturally connected to my students. So, like Howard, I had to immerse myself into their culture, into their neighborhoods, and become, through self awareness, more culturally responsive. I have a very culturally responsive curriculum, and I enjoy that. And I feel like I have the ability to teach other teachers how to do it. I understand what deficit thinking means. I have a new concept of white privilege, a new and broader understanding of just how marginalized, you know, racial and culturally diverse students are within the educational system, and down to the marginalization dealing with gender issues. Then that goes back to social, economic, and status. And then at the end of the day, when all of these ideas are put into place, and I actually can have courageous conversations and discuss these ideas. And one of the things that I wanted to share with you was my view and understanding of white privilege. And I'm just going to read a little bit from my first paper. Gifted, racially and culturally diverse students, by no fault of their own, have been systematically pushed away from receiving the education that they deserve, resulting in the continuous marginalization of culturally diverse students and the reinforcement of white privilege. A white privilege that stems from those within a dominant culture that create their own official knowledge. And I would like to note that the current ultra conservative political environment fuels my desire to help change the face of gifted education to that which includes, not excludes, based on race and social economic status. Now it's time to remove the invisible walls that have surrounded gifted education. The white privilege that has reigned for years must be exposed for the racist, discriminatory framework it upholds. In many schools, the gifted programs are merely used as tools to segregate based on race. The ramification of this framework leads teachers that are not culturally diverse to often view RCD students from a deficient perspective. And Ford explains, with this deficient view, or deficit view, racially and culturally diverse students and families are viewed as inferior in culture or way of life or genetics, and differences are perceived as abnormal or subpar. So this deficit thinking that a lot of people have constructed, it has to be overturned. Now, with understanding the terminology, it allows me to recognize prejudice and oppressive institutions that marginalize students from diverse backgrounds. Like I discussed a moment ago, I can understand, I recognize that the white privilege has really, and their definition of giftedness has affected, having racially and culturally diverse students in gifted programs. And then this contributes to the complete lack of understanding. You know, we when we know better, we do better. And some cultures have never even interacted with people of different cultures. So that causes the students from diverse backgrounds to be put on the sides, be put in a box. And then on top of that, we have the lack of minority representation for gifted, teachers. We don't have enough minority gifted teachers. So those are things that I feel like I understand, and that I met those goals. Now, my future plans related to changes due to personal growth. I had a really strong reaction or experience with the My Peeps assignment, because it made me look at the historical foundation of my family, and made me look at the cultural diversity within my family, and how we define ourselves as black people. How do we look at our history and make sense of it? And then I also look at all the inequities that surrounded my father's experience and whatnot. So we had courageous conversations in my family. I had them with my friends, and then I had a couple of deep, courageous conversations with my son, because he kind of he rides the fence. Where do I say I'm black? Do I say I'm biracial? Do I say I'm multicultural? How do I um, define myself. And so, he kept asking me about what does it mean to be black. And I said, well, it's experience, Eric. You have to, think about that. So he came up with this definition after lengthy discussions, and he says, when it comes to the definition of African American or black people, black is not necessarily or solely defined by genetics, the entirety of one's family tree, or the amount of melanin in one's skin, eyes, or hair, especially a shade of color. Because you have, very, 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 very fair skin, black people, and then very dark skin. However, after a certain genetic or biological minimum is met, black instead is truly defined by culture, community norms, relationships, and shared experiences within society. And that really spoke volumes to me. The fact that he could articulate that so well, and the fact that we were discussing as a family. This course also reaffirmed my desire to record and do ethnographic research at my school, and just really study it. And I want to compare it to previous teaching environments because it's very different. And I've seen the silent inequities and inequalities in majority black Title I schools. This is mind blowing for me. It is it's something that needs to be discussed. It needs to be talked about. And then I also am going to take Dr. Grantham's suggestion to research and create, a series of articles about what I am learning and what I am studying at my school. My networking plans are exciting. I've already started to talk to the counselors at my school about how to address the social and emotional needs of gifted African American students, which I think will be positive for all of the students, and with a focus on, mentorship through motivation, creativity, guided viewing, and then teaching them the 7 habits of highly successful individuals. We're going to be starting off with the 3 P's, which are positive, purposeful, and passionate. And where the students understand that these are, attributes you want to have when you think about education and learning. And then we're also going to do a guided viewing study of the pursuit of happiness and all the obstacles he had to overcome to meet his goals. The main character. I've talked to my principals with the administration about staff development, how to develop a culturally responsive classroom, how to make sure we're teaching materials that are culturally relevant, that are global. I teach at an IB school, and we need to make sure that we are covering the characteristics of being an IB learner. And so making sure we have a culturally responsive materials in our classroom is extremely important. And then I'm going to be discussing with the Gifted Specialist Coordinator right now, introducing new assessments to increase the gifted population in our classes. Because currently we just pretty much go on the Georgia Milestone and the MAP test, which I feel are both culturally biased. And we need to broaden how we look at our gifted students and look at portfolios. We need to have, we also use Renzulli, but sometimes with Renzulli, teachers can be a little bit biased. So we need to have deeper, richer teacher recommendations. And then I would really like to introduce the F-TAP as an assessment. I think it's powerful. I'm so happy that Frazier created it. So I have a lot of work to do, and I'm going to put my work boots on and make it happen. So thank you for listening to my presentation, and you guys have a good evening. Bye-bye.